Hi everyone. Today on I Think I Can Be Happier, we're talking with Neha Aamir, a psychotherapist, but not just any therapist. She's Hannah's.
Yes, this is true. I am so excited to bring Neha on the show because she is one of my favorite people, and I want you all to hear from her. But before we get to that, make sure that you've subscribed for automatic downloads on your favorite podcast app so you can get our episodes right when they drop. We are planning an episode on the power of music. And so if you have had an experience in your life where music has gotten you through a really difficult time, or if you are someone who really understands and could explain the power of music to our listeners, reach out. We'd love to have you on the show.
All right. Thanks, Hannah. Now let's get started with our interview.
Thanks so much for joining us, Neha. I'm so glad you're here. Will you introduce yourself for our listeners and tell them a little bit about who you are?
Of course. So my name is Neha Aamir. I feel like this is one fun secret to finally share. I'm Hannah's therapist, right? Like you never get to say that out in public. But
it's true.
Today
Yes.
you are giving me the opportunity to share that. So that's exciting.
I am.
But I have been a psychotherapist for about a decade now. And I've been working in kind of outpatient settings, hospital settings, private practice, you name it. And I've seen people throughout the spectrum as young as like 7 to 81, being my oldest. And it's been really rewarding and exciting to help walk with people through their journey and help kind of close in some gaps and be a nice ear to listen to. So I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. I love that your oldest client is 81. That's really cool.
It keeps me on my toes because, you just you can be open to kind of being there with whoever walks through the door. And I actually like the fact that I don't work with a niche. Some people do. They have like specific clients, but I like a little bit of that flexibility. It helps me learn more too.
Something that Neha and I were talking about earlier this week, Amy, was how like a little bit frustrating it is that the work just never ends.
Right. Yes.
And I guess that goes along with so much of what we have talked about so far on this podcast. This idea of like being happier is not at all a destination. It is a journey, and there's like always more work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not really an ending point.
I was telling you about doing the podcast. I remember you asked me what my own definition of happiness was, and I realized, and Amy and I were talking about how ironic it was that because I prompted that to her too after talking with you, and we were both like, "Oh, I actually don't know."
Oh.
Wow. I'm curious now for Amy what it was for you.
Well, at that time that Hannah and I talked about it, I mean, I was stumped, which is so funny, just considering that we are doing this podcast. So I think we both kind of landed on the idea of just feeling content.
You guys, you have a point. Everybody remembers a moment in time that they felt happiness. But I think a big part of therapy is really going deep, and understanding, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Where do I feel it in my body? And so on and so forth. So you can really understand these emotions and yourself on such a, deep level that you can recognize these things so much better. And it is different for every single person. I also really appreciate the interconnectedness or the interchangeable of like content, happy, even though we know happiness to be more of like a state, right? It's an adjective to describe like a state of pleasure or contentment, joy, satisfaction. And it indicates like a positive emotional state, right? Content then is kind of that ground that you're standing on. And it's that deeper peace, inner peace, satisfaction that you felt no matter what's going on. So I kind of use them interchangeably too, but I do like feeling content in all states. It's interesting that the root word comes from luck, like having good fortune. So this is like an old English word, and it meant like that things were going in your favor and that you were feeling good inside. Somewhere along the way, though, we turned it into a constant kind of emotional expectation. And I think that might be part of the struggle of like keeping it, that constant happiness, that then we actually go the other way. You're trying to get it so much that you actually don't, right? The opposite happens. So yeah. now, it's so differently experienced through different cultures, different parts of the world. But really an interesting topic to think about and how we can kind of be on that quest. Yeah. Maybe not achieving it, but just understanding it better too. Yeah.
And I do feel like what you were just saying, Neha, this sort of like, it almost feels like a societal expectation where, oh, you must be happy. But then people not necessarily understanding or knowing that actual happiness is temporary and fleeting, and you're not going to feel that all the time. And so now I feel like we should change the title of our podcast. Are we contributing to the misunderstanding of the word happier?
I think that's part of the learning is like what we know and what we don't know, right? And it's kind of like in research, you go in thinking, right? You're going to be wrong, but you're going to land somewhere among the stars.
Yes.
So you guys are doing a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. So can we talk more about happiness and like you mentioned, cultural differences? And I think that's super important to take a look at because, we do want to acknowledge we have our lens, and that's all that we can really know personally anyway. So it'd be interesting to hear about more.
Yeah. So you were talking about like the idea of happiness is actually a very like culturally constructed thing. And what we've been exposed to, especially in the US, is a very specific version of it. And it feels like if you don't get the house, the car, the job, especially even for females, oh my God, the pressure is higher than you must be unhappy, right? And in a lot of like non-Western cultures, happiness is less about feeling good internally and more about living right within a system of relationships, duty, meaning, especially relationships, which is one of the biggest indicators of happiness or contentness. So in the Western model, we see being happy is maximizing personal feelings and freedom. Me, which is great to a certain extent, but I wonder then why are we still unhappy, right? And a lot of non-Western models say being well and having a good balance and a structure in your life, having acceptance, meaning, all these things contribute much more to that balance more than just a place you have to be because it's so changing and we're, not two-dimensional. So there's so many more complexities to it. So take from that. I recently traveled to Costa Rica and they say this saying, pura vida, which means pure life, right? And it feels like they're appreciating like the simple pleasures of life, nothing too extravagant or big, and just being super present in the moment. There was a documentary I was remembering called Blue Zones. It's on Netflix, and it talks about the pockets of the world where people live the longest and like what's going on there, right? What are they doing? So a lot of that again was relationships, physical activity, how they know their neighbors, faith maybe even for some. So there's so many ways to kind of look at it, and again understanding that also being happy does not mean that there is an exemption of being sad, right? Like you need to live with that and understand like what kind of how all of those kind of work together. So yeah, there's so many different cultures and how they're experiencing. And it's cool to kind of be able to expand our minds and understand like how different people experience happiness and take from that. I really find, again, speaking with so many people day in and day out, that social isolation part is really big. Even if you have a community, and nowadays like an online community or anything like that, you're just connected more with yourself and then the world. And it's such a different feeling. You feel like you're contributing or you're part of something. And as human beings, like we're social beings, right? So that part is so innate within us. And obviously every culture and part of the world has its things. Nothing is perfect. But just being connected and having something that's a bigger thing than just you contributes to a lot of well-being. Yeah.
And so recently I went to a conference where I got to meet in person with people that I had only ever interacted with virtually. And it was really, really cool. And it was like it felt different, but I also still felt like I just like really knew them really well because we still were able to build that relationship online. And so I think that it just reminds me of, I know we were talking about that study that was done by Harvard and how important it is, like one of the strongest indicator of what was it, like long and happy life or something like that?
Yeah.
Is relationships, right?
That's right.
Yeah, belonging. And so I think that even if you can't meet people in person for whatever reason, there's still opportunities to be happier and to connect with others and really dig into that relationship aspect of life. One thing that we talked about was that PERMA model that you had mentioned. And I know that the R in that is relationships, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I was thinking about some models again that we have that in a fast world, we need some acronyms to remember, like, how do I do this? So PERMA, PERMA, this is an acronym that Martin Seligman came up with and talks about a lot, and it stands for positive emotions, but not all the time. So this is what people mean by happiness, but it's only one piece, right? And this is just expanding your emotional range of safety and being able to express and notice, like consciously notice the small good moments in life. It's very important to understand that, by the way, this is a skill, not like a personality trait. I was mentioning to you, Hannah, like neurologically, we are trained, right, in our mind to kind of be negative beings. And this is through like evolution psychology that we are looked to see threats and what's wrong in our life. So we actually have to train our mind to kind of look at everything that's going right now or positive, right? And so to elicit that, you have to really train your mind. Some people have it naturally, but most of us have, including me, have to work on it from time to time. And then the E stands for engagement, which is flow. This is when you're so absorbed in something that you kind of lose track of time. I think of, if you've ever watched that Pixar movie, what's it called? Soul. It's this piano teacher.
That was a great movie.
It was such a good movie. Highly recommend. But he talks about this flow state that people get into. And when they're in it, they are kind of reaching this level of ecstasy, this happiness, right? Where they kind of lose track. And he compared it a lot to artists and people who play music. And there's a point in which they kind of just lose themselves. And so it's not just about, just being in that state, but kind of challenging yourself and reducing distractions. And even if it's for like 30 minutes of doing something creative, put your phone away and get in that flow state and just express your creativity, and just identify activities where you feel yourself. People do this when they're cooking, chopping, vegetables. It's therapeutic for them. They get into a flow state. Others cleaning. So, no judgment here, but kind of using that flow state, engagement in something is really good. Are the relationships such a strong predictor? This is really just investing in relationships that offer a lot of depth to us, right? People that we really align with. And you can have like honest conversations with about anything. And so, whether it's a phone call, a text, a chat, something, we're not just always in your head all the time. Even therapy is a form of that to a certain extent, right? It's a therapeutic relationship, but you're getting your ideas across and kind of getting them checked out. So relationships. If there's nothing else to get out of today, right? Happiness, the biggest predictor of it is relationships. And I also know the biggest indicator of like the opposite too. What's going to be the fastest thing to kill your happiness too.
Right. Yeah. Toxic relationships.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also it's comparison. Anytime you compare yourself, it kills happiness in like a heartbeat. So really quickly, the rest are M, which is meaning. This is feeling like your life is connected to something bigger than you. And so you can anchor your life in like values, which can be growth, family, service, spirituality, whatever it might be, and understand like your role in something that's bigger. And A is for accomplishment. So this is mastery of something or progress, of achieving goals. So you want to set goals that are internally meaningful, not just socially impressive, right? There's a lot of externalizing like our self-worth and, I'm doing this because it makes me look good or makes my Instagram look great. But just for yourself, something that you can kind of get involved in and feel like, okay, I've really mastered this thing. Because that also helps us with then self-confidence, self-trust, and so on and so forth. So easily just to be able to do any of this, I want you to think about which part of your life, even currently, is imbalanced. Which part of this PERMA, right, needs a little bit more of TLC. And you can kind of do anything in that to kind of help it come back to a balance. So if you're looking at the P, write down one specific moment that you had each night, right? We talk a lot about gratitude, Hannah, right? Again, big indicator of people that are happy. Happy people are super grateful. And I'm not talking gratitude in the sense of like, oh, I'm just grateful, right? What specifically in your day went really well today? What specific things are you really proud of? So like pick a thing, right? Anything in PERMA that needs kind of more loving, and then go after that. So that's kind of like some practical ways that you can find some balance and restrike that back in your life.
I love it.
It starts with yourself, right? What's your relationship with yourself? And we have to work on that relationship with ourselves to be happier, because self-trust, that quiets inner doubts. It reduces the need for kind of that external validation and helps us feel more emotionally steady. So we know that when we trust ourselves, we're more clear-headed, we make decisions that are more sound, and we're just more accepting of kind of whatever happens to us, right? So there's two parts of this. One is you're actively being a participant in life and doing what you can, and then also being able to let go and say, you know what, whether it's the universe or whatever, like this is stuff I don't have control over. And once again, finding the balance between the two.
Now, just curious, with grounding yourself, is there anything that you have found like to be especially helpful in feeling grounded?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amy. I really like meditation, and I get a lot of pushback sometimes talking about it in therapy because people are like, I just can't do it right. I'm not good at it. Meditation's not for me. But I feel like we live in a very noisy world. And for anyone that deals with any sort of anxiety, kind of getting up and being plugged in, anxiety, ADHD, depression, anything, that's not good for our nervous system. So practicing meditation, and it could be any types of meditation. Like I said, you could just very presently eat your food, right? Or wash the dishes or take a walk. We know it takes about 8 to 10 minutes to get into that state. So you'll notice when you're going on a walk, if you're out there for maybe, 10 to 15 minutes, it's around that 7 to 8 minute mark where your body kind of syncs with nature. And if you can get into that, right, that helps to shut down all the noise. And so for grounding and again, greater happiness, to be able to unplug from our phones, work, all the people that need us in our life, and just give to yourself and say, all right, I'm so happy to wake up today. I know it sounds cliche sometimes, but it's like, I have an able body. It works. I'm able to like take care of myself, others around. Yeah, there's challenges, but I'm capable of doing all of this, right? But if I can't kind of ground myself right now in this moment and remind myself of my goals and what I want to do today, nothing else is possible. And so health, this is part of health, wellness, across cultures. We found that meditation is a beautiful practice of just exhaling. And we need it because it's so noisy all the time.
Yes. Yes. All right, great. Thank you.
I know I'd given you some statistics, so I don't know if you'll like this part, but there was a recent research that I saw from the University of California that kind of broke down on the fact that life circumstances don't matter as much as we think. 50% of happiness is genetic baseline. 10% of it is life circumstance, and then 40% of it is intentional activity. So people often overestimate things like money, status, right? Life milestones. But human beings are terrible predictors of happiness. We think something will make us happy. And then very quickly, there's this word in psychology called hedonic adaptation. You'll notice that you get a new baseline. So you have that new job that you've been kind of working for, and you think, if I just get this job, I'm going to be 10 times happier. Maybe, a month into it, you're right back to kind of your baseline or a new baseline, but it's never really the answer. So happiness is less about kind of like those milestone things and more about like lifestyle, right? So I thought that was very interesting too.
Well, for listeners who are listening to this episode right now, keep listening to the next episode because Amy and I sat down with Ian Paynton and he talked exactly about that. And so, Neha, when you and I talked about this episode, we kind of came up with 3 main takeaways that I thought maybe we could talk about that have been really helpful for me, and I do think apply really well to this idea of I think I can be happier or content, whatever it is. And so those are the idea of reframing, self-compassion, and self-compassion kind of as one. Cognitive flexibility, which Amy and I, as executive function coaches, we know the magical power of
Yes.
cognitive flexibility.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about that. And then as you know, my word for the year for myself is self-trust. And so I would love to talk about that too.
Those are good ones, by the way. I think they really hit on many different aspects. And I'm so glad that, again, these are so true for you, because I also know how true these are for a lot of different people too. So we know as the older we become, the more rigid, the more fixed we become in our personalities and the way that we think. And to a certain degree, that's okay, right? Like we have fixed states and then personality traits that are a little bit more changeable. But one of the things that's maybe not so helpful in that is we lose perspective. And then we think my way is the right way and this is the way it must be. And anything that goes against this is like questioning my existence, right? And you get these deep core beliefs that we talk about often that are hard to do anything out of, because you got to look at them, you got to really understand where they came from, and then work to kind of unlearn what you've learned, right? And so we know that people who have cognitive flexibility, being able to be adaptable in their day-to-day, they just have more perspective and flexibility in the way that they think. Interestingly, they say everything emotional is physical. And so minds that are like this, right, really tight, that leads to a lot of like chronic illnesses, like autoimmune disorders and arthritis, right? And if you think about your bones, right, when they kind of get stuck like that, no flexibility in the way that we think. It's really hard, right? It's a lot easier said than done, but being able to reframe your situations, your relationships, the way you're thinking. Hey, I know I just automatically thought that thought, but let me stop for a second. Is there any other evidence that can help me think about the situation in a different way that benefits me, right? Or let it go. I say in a funny way, sometimes if things are going wrong, I'm like, I was scheduled for a bad day. Bring it on. And then comes the self-compassion and the laughter, right? And being able to laugh about these situations. Like, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take life too seriously. Take it seriously at the right moments. But, right, like, this is so much pressure that we put on ourselves constantly that we don't stop and breathe and kind of relax our shoulders and unclench our jaws and say, okay, everything is okay, right? And let me try to remain a little bit malleable. And that's one of the cool things about our brain is it's actually malleable. We can change the way we think. We can audit the content of our thoughts, right? We don't have to believe everything we think, believe it or not. And so a lot of this can be passing stuff that you're like, oh, that's a thought. I don't have to catch it or internalize it. All three of those components, I think, are so helpful to being able to just look at things on a macro level, but also a micro level, if that makes sense. And daily practices, they're hard again in the beginning, but over time, they can also become automatic, just like your first thoughts.
I remember, I don't know if it was our first session or maybe our second session, but you said, we do not have to believe our core beliefs about ourselves. And that just blew my mind. I remember, I think I cried a lot in that session because I was just like, wow, I don't have to believe these things that I say about myself or that I believe that I am capable of or not capable of. And I think that requires a lot of flexible thinking and a lot of self-compassion. So,
Yeah.
and then trusting this current version of ourselves can do the things that we are working on, believing that, like, not working, like before we thought we couldn't do them, and now we're believing we're working on believing that we can.
Yeah, that's a stage of that change that eventually you become empowered, right, to be steering your own ship, or being the driver in your own seat and saying like, wait a minute, no, right? Like, I don't have to believe this thought that somebody put in my brain or somehow my brain came up with through either conscious or subconscious things. So yeah, to be able to alter that, again, superpower a little bit, cool. Also very hard. You said it earlier, Hannah, you said, why is this so hard, right? And many times you're like, ah. And I feel, and actually this is also backed by research, is people who are happier or more content also sometimes have more challenging lives. And think about that for a second, right? Because you're working so hard to do all of these things. And sometimes it's easier to sit back and say, I don't care, right? Like, I'm just going to be this way. And you don't realize how much you're hurting yourself, but it is a lot of work to kind of understand yourself on this depth and unlearn, relearn, mess up along the way. Hannah had mentioned, we were talking about embarrassment, right, in one of our sessions. And I said, it's such an underutilized emotion, right? Because we don't experience it enough to be able to fully understand it. You're always hiding your embarrassment, right? So yeah, there's a lot of mistakes you make along the way, and not everyone's willing to do that. So it's actually much more challenging, but it's much more purposeful in the long run.
And yeah, then more
So,
meaningful too.
yeah. Yeah. So Neha, thinking about as we age, how do we how do we maintain cognitive flexibility? Like thinking about, you know, 20, 30 years from now, like is there anything that we can do now and along the way to protect that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes with exercising any other muscles in your body, right? You leave it alone, you
Hmm.
lose bone density, you lose your strength, you lose all of that. And so to be able to exercise different parts of your brain, having conversations, listening to podcasts like this, perspectives, introducing yourself to people of all kinds of cultures, learning books, all kinds of things to be able to just inform yourself, going to therapy. Hint, hint, right? The people we love the most are also the most stubborn and should be in therapy, but don't. And then the
Yes.
people that, are kind of as a result of it do. But yeah, you're always kind of remaining challenged in some ways and being okay with being wrong and being open to
Hmm.
learning, right? How many of people we know or ourselves are like, I don't want to. It's scary, right?
Right.
Just be an observer and understand it and challenge that part. This is also a very interesting fact, but kind of a sad one. They did kind of a milestone checker according to age of like when you achieve certain things by. And emotional intelligence, right, was on one of them. And emotional intelligence requires a lot of cognitive flexibility and things like that.
Hmm.
Do you know what age people really, what's the word, kind of conquer emotional intelligence and by what age you get it?
Never.
Close. Amy?
I don't know. Oh gosh. I mean, I'd like to say around, 30
Okay,
or so,
cool.
but I feel like that's going to be wrong.
Yeah. Our,
So,
our our brain fully develops at 26, so that's kind of close.
yeah.
But emotional intelligence is 82.
Ah,
Oh,
your
really?
client is almost there.
Almost there, right? Many of us don't make
Oh
it.
my
But look,
goodness.
think about it. You have your whole life of an experience, right? You almost are out the door, so to speak, and you kind of have this like years of knowledge and experience to be able to understand like, oh, this, because I think your 20s, 30s, there's a lot of hustle. You're getting the degrees, you're getting the
Yeah.
job, you're getting the friendships, right? But I think there's something to that, is that towards the end of your life, you're really thinking about the things that matter because you finally can. So
Yeah.
it's kind of sad, but knowing that, for anyone that's competitive like me, is like, okay, I'm going to do this earlier. I don't want to wait till 82. Yeah, yeah. So just
Yeah,
keep
that's
learning.
amazing.
Yeah, keep learning, keep being open, keep introducing yourself to new things all the time. One of my favorite questions to kind of end sessions with sometimes is, when's the last time you did something for the first time? And kind of,
Mm.
you kind of stop because you're like, when have I? Every day starts to feel so mundane, but how are you learning then? How are you growing if you're not doing something new?
Can you share some of your favorite strategies with our listeners? Like, I know some of the ones that you've shared with me, I really love, but maybe you can impart your wisdom uh, on our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think one of the things I always do is simple. Have something always to look forward to, right? Whether it's and some people can think of that as like the vacation, right? Yeah, maybe. But it could also just be like your coffee that you have on your commute in the morning. And it could be the best coffee in the world on your commute that feels like a vacation because you're listening to your favorite song, right? You ever like look in your rear view and you see somebody just like belting music and it's just so quote unquote happy? That's happy. that you're just free. But having something on our schedules to always look forward to is one of my favorite things, whether it's big or small, because it takes you out of the mundane and helps you connect with yourself, someone else, whether it's a hobby or anything like that. Always kind of be working towards something, so you're challenging yourself. Gratitude is such a big one. Again, like I said, whether you take out like a couple moments of your day in the morning or at night, but our brain is always going towards what's going wrong, and you really want to train and highlight your brain to say what's going okay. I think it's really important to talk also about toxic positivity. You ever heard of that?
Yes. Yes.
I think
Yes,
there's a big
absolutely.
culture of that where we're always forcing happiness down people's throats, right? And it's toxic to a certain extent where you don't really feel it. And so I always say, like, if you're forcing yourself or it's starting to feel toxic, try to feel neutral. What do I feel neutral about, right? A lot of people do this with like body image issues. So I'm not saying you should love every part of your body, but what do you feel neutral about? Right? What do you feel okay about? If we look for those things, you will see a lot more of those things or signs start to produce, right? Start just training your mind for that. So those are kind of some of my favorite ones. Hannah, I like to table thoughts. That's one of my favorite ones is if you have a really sticky thought. So a thought that kind of keeps coming up again and again and again, the more you avoid it, the more it kind of has power over you. So put it on a table. And by that, what I mean is put the thought on a table that you draw. And we know that a table is held up by 4 legs, right? That's how the thought is supported by maybe 4 pieces of evidence. So if you have a thought, find 4 pieces of evidence that support it, and I'm sure you'll find it very quickly. So if the thought is, I'm a loser, tell me 4 things. Why are you a loser? And maybe those are really real to you. But then I want you to go back and cross out each thought and try to reframe each of those thoughts so that one by one you're taking the legs of the table away, and that thought is not so strong or doesn't have that much power over you. So it's thinking about your thinking, called metacognition.
What also cognitive flexibility and metacognition. Oh, they're just, I mean, you literally cannot make change in your life if you don't practice those 2 skills and strengthen them.
100%. Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of EF skills, I wanted to go back a little bit to what you were saying about having something to look forward to. And it made me think of like a really practical way to make sure that happens is to literally schedule it. Like you said, to have it on your schedule. And I was thinking, if you say you finally make that coffee date with a friend and you actually go and nobody has to cancel, while you're there, schedule the next one and put it on the calendar.
Yes.
And so, and just that's like, you have to be you mentioned intention before, like you really do have to be so intentional about it, because life gets busy, and it's so much easier to be like, oh, I'll just do it next time. I can like be happier some other day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And it is fleeing, right? Like we know happiness is something that comes and goes, and so does all the rest of our emotions. So it is a temporary state too. But again, it feels nice, right, to be in it for however long we can be in. And so sharing that happiness, again, that's a great way too. If you're feeling happy, share it with the people around you. That will just make you feel even greater. Or do a charitable act where it feels and means something to you, but always kind of associated with some kind of practicality or an activity. Don't just think it, do it. Right? It's not, the state of happy is in the action itself. So follow it with some kind of action that you do. And many of us put the plans on and then we want to cancel them. Do it anyway.
Just get yourself to do it. It reminds me of
Yes.
another strategy that I have really benefited from from our conversations, is the idea of when you feel the discomfort of maybe something new or something that you're unsure of, you can do it. You are actually capable of the thing, to try to push through and do it, and use the tools and the strategies or the people that you have in your life to push through and learn how I can tolerate that. I can do that. And then, like you said, it's emotional and physical. Like you might physically feel it when you can manage the emotions and get yourself through it, then your body will be like, oh, this isn't actually so bad. So it's kind of like feel so terrible next time.
That's a really good question to ask yourself. Am I unhappy or am I uncomfortable? Right? And usually it's you're fearful, you're uncomfortable with whatever feeling is coming up and you haven't really quite sat with it. And those feelings are asked to be, sat with. That's why what we do in therapy a lot is like, no, sit with it, get to learn it. Don't be so afraid of it. And then Hannah, I think you're talking about the zones of growth. We start with the comfort zone and then we get to the fear zone, which is the part that scares us. And most of us, when we get to the fear zone, we go right back to comfort zone. We're like, nope, too hard, too uncomfortable. I don't like this feeling. Let's go back. However, those of us that all of us, I believe, that can, right? If you keep tiptoeing a little bit past fear zone is the learning zone. This is now where you kind of have put your emotions at bay and you're really just focusing on the new skill that you're learning and you're past the embarrassment of things and you're acquiring something new. Now you keep going past the learning zone. Now you're in the growth zone. So if you can kind of mentally understand this model, what is it saying? Everything you want is sitting on the other side of fear. But if we keep living in comfort and fear, how are we ever going to tolerate the discomfort? How are we ever going to grow, right? And the more you kind of get this equation in your head, the next time you're doing something that's super hard or humbling, you're like, oh yeah, I just have to be really bad at it the first 100 times, but then it'll click and it'll get easier and better.
What do you think about that, Amy?
I mean, Hannah, as Neha was describing that, I mean, all I could think about was how you've really helped push me outside of my comfort zone in so many ways, which I know we've talked about a lot before. But yeah, there's so many experiences I can recall that, I'm so grateful for. But yeah, there's some discomfort initially, and it feels pretty great being on the other side of that, knowing that that I can push past those feelings. So. Yeah.
Such a mental game too, because once you are on that side, you're like, why didn't I do this earlier? What was I so scared of? Right. I love when we can just call out things that, you want to hide it, but when you call it out, no one can make fun of it for you about it, right? You're like, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, I don't know anything. Yeah, I might mess up. Yeah. Which again is that confidence and self-trust within yourself that I don't know everything.
And also what you were just saying reminds me of the name it to tame it idea and how, when you name your emotion, not only are you moving yourself out of your emotional part of your brain and into the thinking part of your brain, but you are also taking away its power a little bit by saying it aloud. Yeah. And also you're telling everybody, like you just said, Neha.
Right? 100%. Agree.
Yeah. Thing that we were talking about the other day is you prompted me a question, what do I need to do to move forward? Or what do I need to do moving forward, like from this point on? And something that Amy and I have talked about before is like how executive function coaching is very like forward thinking work, right? Like we're like, okay, like what are we going to try next? What are these future goals and everything? So I like that question. Like, what do I need right now as I move forward?
Yeah. I feel like when you ask that of someone, usually they know, like all the BS, all the words and everything aside, it's like, I need rest. I need sleep, or I need a moment. I need a shower. I need to eat. And we quickly kind of figure out, okay, what are those things that we need right now? And you do that, usually the rest kind of falls in place.
Yeah, right before we got on, Amy and I were talking about, Amy was saying, Hannah, I really need to wash my hair. And I said, oh, that was me this morning. So instead of going to the gym, I took a nap and washed my hair.
Look at that. Self-care at its best, right?
Yeah. So this morning, someone mentioned the RAIN tool, RAIN, and I have to admit that was a new one for me today. So I'm curious if Neha, if that's one that you're familiar with, and if you can share what that is for our listeners.
I mean, I think I kind of touched on some of these things, which is kind of thinking about the way you're thinking, right? And this acronyms, just like PERMA, are really good to just help us have a starting point and an ending point. So stands for recognize, accept, investigate, and then nurture, right? Recognition, once again, is kind of like you can do a body scan. You can kind of understand what's going on with me right now in this present moment. What's the event itself? Where am I feeling this, in my body? What are my thoughts around it? Kind of just recognize what's going on with you. Accept is an interesting one because I think there's always a pushback of like, but I don't accept this, right? Or there's anger around it. Accepting something doesn't always equal approving something, right? So what that means is I can accept that I'm sitting in traffic. I don't have to agree with it, right? So you're just kind of accepting what is very logically black and white. Investigate, I think that's the key right there, is looking for other perspectives. Maybe where am I right? Where did I get it right? Where am I getting it kind of a little maybe wrong or questionable? And do I have all perspectives? Do I need to talk to someone else to kind of figure out what's going on? And then nurture, yeah, like kind of was saying earlier, of what do you need right now? Because this allows us to not just sit and be stuck with our thoughts and feelings and nowhere for it to go, but an action plan. Keep talking about putting things into action to move forward. Emotions by itself are information. Happiness is information, sadness, anger, it's all information about what's going on with our mental state. And to be able to know what to do about it is kind of the next step. So I think RAIN is a good one, and any of these really, to kind of think about the starting points, and a great mindfulness practice too, of letting things go, accepting, without agreeing with it all the time. At the end of the day, just, giving it a space, really. Because the more you avoid stuff, the bigger it really becomes, doesn't it? Rather than just sit with it, understand it, take the power away, and recognize what it is that you need to do moving forward. When you listen to yourself, you trust yourself, hopefully, to know, all right, I got this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Neha. Yeah, that's so helpful. Yeah, I love that.
It's a good one. I feel like it's all of these are really, again, good to kind of just check in with ourselves. They're good check-in marks. Easy journal prompts, beginning or end of the night. I love to do journals like at the end of the night where I can just empty out my thoughts and really just let go of whatever it is, plan for certain things, and then actually get some rest so my brain is not active and alive. But yeah, whatever works for each person. And that's the cool thing about coping skills, is it's so unique to every person, and it's also always evolving. So you got to have a couple of them if one is not working, but do what works for you and try these things out. You're only going to find out once you try, what works for you.
Right.
And something that we share in coaching sessions all the time is that you have to try things more than once, and you can't expect things to just work magically without that practice, but also to accept and recognize that it's hard to do that. But if you don't try at all, then you never know.
And maybe you're not ready, and that's the recognition, right?
Yeah.
Because readiness is so important. Many of us know what to do, but we're just not ready to do it. And it's important to recognize that too. If this is requiring a lot of me right now. Maybe I'm not ready right now, or what is it that's really holding me back? So that is also part of that recognition, readiness.
I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Wedding People. And the woman in it was sharing something that her dad had said to her. And it was when she was depressed. And the dad said, okay, if you're not capable of doing that thing right now, whatever that is, what can you do? What is something that you can do? So maybe you can't get up and take a shower, but maybe you can get up and change your socks or whatever.
Right.
And I thought that was like a really good prompt. Like, well, what can I do?
That's
what
amazing.
am I ready for?
Sometimes it is just one foot in front of the other. We have to understand our capacity. Each person has a different threshold, different capacity for things. Even happiness. Everyone has a different capacity for experiencing that emotion too. But yeah, really, really being able to see what can I control in this moment and letting go what I can't, starting small, gradual. These things might sound overwhelming, but again, it's more about, the little things, the 1% change.
Do you have anything else you want to add that we didn't cover? Any words of wisdom?
Can I ask you guys, when's the last time you felt really happy?
I would say, today, Hannah knows that, this week we've had some challenges this week, but very happy this afternoon. My son came home kind of unexpectedly from just a few days from college, for a long weekend, and just got some time with him, took him to lunch, and that was just, it really just changed my whole day, just having that little bit of time with him. So
I love that. That's amazing. Surprises are the best when you're not expecting them.
Yeah.
I was at a wedding on Saturday and I got to be with my husband's family, and it was really fun. And there was like a tinge of not sadness, but my daughter wasn't able to be there. She was at another thing, but I was also like super happy for her that she got to be at this other thing. So,
Ugh,
yeah, those emotions are so complicated.
you're always feeling multiple things at the same time, right?
What about you, Neha?
I have a son who is about a year and a half, and there's a lot of energy there. But um, I think I like cuddling with him a lot. And that just, I think because he's so innocent and pure, I can have what kind of day, whatever kind of day. And just to know that he's
Yeah.
there and he loves me and I'm his mama and, I'm his everything. And I can just hold and, like, even though I'm losing sleep and all of that. And I'm sure you guys remember maybe, right? Those times of just raising. It's so hard. Like you said, Hannah, there's multiple emotions. But just holding him and sleeping with him at night, like, I feel so happy. Like I did something. I accomplished. This is my biggest accomplishment today. If I didn't do anything right, is get his love and be able to love him back. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Love that.
All right, I have one more question for you. That because I love that, and it's actually what you asked us earlier, or what you
Oh.
said earlier. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
Ooh. Okay. I like to do a lot of firsts, believe it or not, because I like to practice what I preach. um, but this winter, I really got into skiing. And if anyone wants to understand their mental health, do something like skiing, because you will very quickly find out how much you want control, how anxiety producing it is to go down a mountain when you have no skill, and like truly learn to let go and trying something new and be so humbled with how much you're falling. And it's devastating. It hurts. Nothing about the beginning is fun. But I was really challenged to be like, you know what? I see these like 2-year-olds zooming by me. What's different, right? Like, why can't I do something hard? And it's a new hard thing. And so I really started practicing almost like every other weekend and going a lot to the mountains and just kind of experiencing all of that and the views. And I got it eventually. But I practiced learning a new skill, right? And really being bad at it in the beginning and kind of going through all the stages, but then eventually coming to understand like, wow, this, I don't have to be the best. I'm not trying to be the next Olympic athlete over here, but this is helping me connect with my family and allowing me to try something new for the first time. And it's beautiful, right? Like everyone hates winter, but I've found a reason to love it. So yeah.
The last time I tried something new, well, you're hearing it right now
Yeah, that's
because
true.
I think that was maybe 2 weeks ago or so,
Yeah.
whenever we did our first episode. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it's exciting. Hannah, how about you?
Yeah, my first, I presented at a conference for the first time last, 2 weeks ago, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. I loved it, and I think I was actually nervous, but after reading The Upside of Stress and realizing, how important it is to me to pay attention to how stress impacts me, I decided to continually tell myself, you're actually just super excited about this because this is a really awesome opportunity. And so many thanks to the folks at the Neurodiversion Conference for allowing me to speak and lead an activity. And it was really fun. So yeah.
That's great.
I remember
Love
talking to you
that.
about that, Hannah. I was like, anxiety and excitement, right?
Yes.
They're the same kind of pathway in
Yes.
your brain, but it's what you label it
Yeah.
as is what
That's
happens,
right.
right? It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second I started talking, I was like, I got
You got
this.
this. Right.
Yeah.
I'm really, really like just hearing both of you. Yeah, I was just thinking in a world where we just try so hard to be someone, something else, right? Like you need to be exactly you. And with your quirks and all the things and the first times, right? Like this is what I would want as a listener is just the real version of you. And I think that's the ultimate coming to, whether it's happiness or contentment is like there's just one of me and the history of the world would literally be incomplete without you and be you, right? Like be you. And that is like once you kind of have that relationship with yourself, whether it takes 30 years or 82, hopefully earlier. But I think that is the ultimate freedom is, yeah, this is me. right? I come with all the bells and whistles and I'm this chaotic mess at times. And yeah, I'm okay with that. That's happiness too. So thank you guys for being yourself too. This has made it's so much easier. And I appreciate that a lot. And just being a woman too, I think that's a lot to look up to.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That means a
Thank you so
lot because
much.
that is ultimately,
Yes.
right? Probably our first goal of this,
Yeah.
of doing this show is what we
Absolutely.
talked for at length about was how we really wanted to come to it that way. So
Being
that's good to-
relatable. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So before we go, Neha, will you share with our guests where they can find you if they are interested in maybe, I don't know, talking to you more, asking you some questions, want to know more about something you mentioned?
Absolutely. So again, as a therapist, I have my own private practice and you can find me on Psychology Today. I currently practice in the state of Connecticut. Just type in my name. That's Neha, last name Aamir, Aamir. And send an inquiry, send a phone number, a text. I'm always happy to chat about any questions. Sometimes people also are nervous, like what they expect. So I'm happy to do a consult as well. But yeah, reach out if you ever need.
Hannah, Neha was amazing. I so loved hearing just all of the information that she shared, especially the strategies. Really, really loved hearing from her on that. What was it like for you having your therapist on, having that conversation with her here?
Oh, it was so great. I just felt such peace and calm the whole time we were talking. And it was really cool to hear her share all these strategies and things that she knows in a more like broad and general application that will be useful for lots of people as opposed to like in a session. And so it was really cool and very, I don't know. I'm not really sure what the right adjective is,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed that experience. Well,
Yeah.
so yeah, I really loved it. I'm so glad that she said yes, and she just has so many interesting things to say. And something that I had said to you before that I just want to say again was like she remembers so much, and you and I, Amy, have talked about like how nice it would be to actually have a memory,
Right. Yes.
to remember something every once in a while.
Yes.
And so to hear her, I mean, like in our sessions all the time, she just like spouts off stuff, and it's just so cool. She can just pull it from somewhere in her brain, and it's very useful to have in a therapist.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope you guys, learned something from Neha, and if you've considered therapy but you haven't reached out yet to someone to find someone, I really encourage you to ask around or to look on Psychology Today, and also if you try a therapist and it doesn't quite feel right, I do really believe that we know the very first time we meet with someone if it's going to be a good fit or not. And so if you've tried someone and you weren't really sure about it, then it's okay. It's okay to not go back to them.
Yeah, Hannah, I totally agree with that. Really, really important to note that you are. I'm sorry. I need to stop talking. Yes, Hannah, I totally agree with you on that. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Yes, thank you for listening today. Amy's really tired, so I'll get to take over. All right, check out the show notes for more information. And just a reminder that this podcast is not a substitute for professional mental health support. Please take care of yourself, listen to yourself like we were just talking about. What do you need? And reach out to a qualified licensed provider for help. And reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. For now, you can email us at hello@icanbehappier.com or visit our brand spanking new website at icanbehappier.com. And we are still working on socials, but we're not there yet. Like we said, we're people in progress, right, Amy?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
All right. We'll be back with more. Thanks for listening.
Thanks,
Amy,
everyone.
go to bed.
Hannah, don't fire me. Don't fire me yet.